and welcome to My Security TV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. This is our Tuesday afternoon episode. My name is Chris Cubbage. I'm the director with My Security Media, and today we're joined by Julie Inman Grant, the eSafety Commissioner, which is with the Australian Office of the eSafety Commissioner, discussing online safety and public awareness, international trends and safety by design. We do appreciate Julie's time. This is a week following Safer Internet Day, so we'll get a wrap up of what we did on Safer Internet Day, as well as what Julie did. She did a lot more than what we did, but we tried our best. And without further ado, we'll bring in Julie Inman Grant, eSafety Commissioner. Julie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for getting involved in Safer Internet Day last week.
Yeah, look, we tried our best, and hey, I did reach out to try and get you on the actual day, but maybe tell us about the day as well. Like, you were kind of everywhere. You sort of take over Australia's TV channels on that particular day. But yeah, how did it all go?
You know, it was great. We've continued to really gather some really important momentum. And what was really important for us is to bring the whole broader community along. So we had 3,000 organizations that officially signed up, and I think a lot more that engaged. And it's celebrated in 170 countries. And due to the time zones, we in New Zealand together kind of set the tone for the whole day. And, you know, I guess tend to punch above our weight in terms of what we do. So here we had a sub-theme beyond better internet, which was Start the Chat, because we think it's really important that we're actually giving all of our citizens some actionable things that they can do. And certainly we focused around a couple of different deliverables this year. The first was the release of some of our research around the digital lives of Aussie teens. But then we also released two new novel resources. One was a picture book about swoosh and glide and rule number 5, the little Australian sugar gliders that you know, dealt with issues with tablets in the woods. And we had Jimmy Reeves.
Yeah, I saw that.
Read the book for us, and he was fantastic. We also have a My Family Rules song by Lala, who's another children's entertainer, and I found it almost more infectious than you know, Baby Shark or Fruit Salad Yummy Yummy. But we hope that it catches on, and we hope that mothers and fathers around Australia will forgive us for that. But of course, what I think drove a lot of the coverage and the interest was the research around the digital lives of Aussie teens, and there were some pretty, you know, concerning findings in there, certainly. Now, we were talking to teens themselves, and so you can take this with a grain of salt, but they told us they spend an average of 2 hours a day outside school online. But they are using up to 4 different social media sites at any one time. And then 40% told us that they'd had at least one negative online experience in the past 6 months between March and September. So really during the lockdown.
Yeah.
And the most concerning stat, of course, is that 1 in 3 had a stranger contact them online. And that's up from 1 in 4 back in 2017 when we did our broader national youth survey. There were other unwanted you know, experiences they were having. 2 in 10 had unsolicited images, whether they be pornographic images or violent extremism content sent to them, stuff that they can't see, stuff that they told us was very distressing. So, you know, that wasn't great news.
Well, I suppose it's quite combative for them. It can be combative, even just monitoring a Twitter feed. It can be, you know, interesting reading, to say the least, amongst professionals, let alone what it's like. And one of the things I wanted to reach out to you in terms of things like on gaming platforms, and I know you've sort of made some comments around that as well. One of the key things on this sort of theme was online safety and public awareness, and maybe public awareness around that cohort of teenagers. How prepared are they when they're coming online? Do you think they are, say, compared to 5 years ago? Do you think their awareness is higher, and it's hard to start to engage in that conversation with a young sort of teenager to say, you're going to see some things that, you know, you need to be able to comfortable to come and talk to us about as parents? So yeah, how do you find that developing, I suppose?
Oh, I think that's a very good observation, because one of the things that we've seen in terms of engaging with young people, but also through this research, is particularly after a young person has a negative experience online, they're developing empathy, and they want to have more information about how to stay safe online and keep their friends online. Now, a concern of ours for a long time is that the vast majority of young people out there will not tell a trusted adult when something goes wrong online, almost 50%. And that's not surprising. When we get to our teenage years, we're trying to establish some independence from our parents. I'm sure a lot of kids are concerned about device denial or getting in trouble. They may feel a bit of shame, but they also told us they don't talk to a trusted adult because they don't think it'll be taken seriously. There is anything that can be done. Of course, a lot of teenagers are more au fait with technology than a lot of us adults, but I think what we need to get across to young people, and again, this is why the Start the Chat theme was so poignant and so important here, is that we as adults do have the judgment, maturity, and life experience to be able to help kids solve a range of problems, whether it's reporting to the platform or reporting to eSafety. But it's important that we start the conversations early and often. It's never too early, and it's particularly not too early given that we know that 42% of Australian 2-year-olds have some kind of access to a digital device, usually through entertainment. By the time they're 4 years old, it's up to 94%.
Yeah.
So the minute we're handing over this digital device, we need to start having these conversations with them. Now, they're very different conversations that you're obviously going to have with a toddler. And we've got guidance around that. It's around being safe, being kind, asking for help, and making good choices. By the time kids are going to school, they'll be even more exposed to technology, even if they don't have their own device or on social media. So we're working with schools to help them teach what we call the 4 R's for the digital age: respect, responsibility, teaching digital resilience, and critical reasoning skills. Obviously, critical reasoning skills are important for adults as well, for all of us, in terms of discerning fact between fiction, right between wrong, telling when somebody's an imposter, or even questioning who might be asking us for something on the other end of the screen. So all of these things are really important, and we just have to be as engaged in our kids' online lives as the way we are their everyday lives.
Well, we read out one of you had the top 6 tips, I think, on the campaign. I think it was the second one or third one, the Tame the Tech, which I thought is a good one. How confident or comfortable are you with the tech and the capability to tame it in that? I mean, it can be as simple as making sure your Wi-Fi is protected and encrypted and the like, but with, say, the gaming platforms, you've come out and kind of said that they're not monitoring that close enough. They're just kind of opening up these chat rooms, and they know teenagers are in there, and they're not sort of monitoring it any in terms of for safety or bullying and the like. How comfortable are you with the status of the tech if we're going to tame it?
I mean, I think we have some way to go, and technological solutions, whether they're privacy settings or parental controls, are never going to be enough. We can't just set and forget. I think back to the fundamentals and talking early with our kids, we've got a range of tools, whether they're kind of speaking points or even family agreements, where we're kind of setting the limitations around how much time kids are spending online. It's much better to have these conversations when they're younger and before things go wrong than waiting till they're teenagers and then trying to ratchet back their time online. But it's also about getting used to using technology in open spaces so that you can see what they're doing. And one of the concerns, we don't like to drive with fear, drive messaging with fear, but our investigators for the past few years, and law enforcement will corroborate this, we're seeing increasing instances of what we call coerced self-produced child sexual abuse material. So these are young children as young as 5 or 6 on iPads in their bedrooms or in bathrooms, being remotely coaxed into performing sexual acts or sharing images. And if it's part of a a grooming or an extortion scam, what often happens is it will escalate, and it will start with a nude photo, and then it will be a nude video, and then it may be payment, or it may be a contact offense. But in some of these videos, we can see the children performing sex acts, and you can hear the parents' voices in the background.
Wow.
Literally happening under our noses. So, I think our parents, before we had the technology, used to say, when you had the boyfriend over, nothing good happens behind closed doors. The door open. Yeah. But I think the same rules apply, and that also applies to online gaming. When kids are playing at Fortnite, they often have the headphones on. They're on these commingled platforms. Not only is there the potential risk of grooming, but there's a lot of exposure to really kind of toxic language and content, because you do have young kids paired up with grown adults and maybe foul-mouthed teenagers. So just having a situational awareness and keeping an ear out or an eye out where you can is really important to understanding what your child might be experiencing online.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the research in this and how these behaviours are maturing and changing as we sort of embed ourselves in this tech, and COVID-19 has obviously accelerated that and brought everyone in to that home environment. One of the things I wanted to touch on is the international trends, and then we'll move on, maybe finish off with safety by design if we've got time. But the international trends, you mentioned Australia and New Zealand punches above your weight, say for Safer Internet Day. Where are we on that international trend? Australia at the moment, we're fighting Google and Facebook and anyone else that doesn't pay enough tax. But how do you see us on a world stage in this and the work that you do?
I think what others say is that we are world leading. We are the first, and now not the only. Fiji has just set up an online safety commission, which is at its beginning phases and is different in scale. And we've certainly evolved a lot as an online safety regulator and educator. And what I try and explain to people is that, we do try and do things in a nimble way. And because there is no other online safety regulator anywhere else in the world with the powers that we have, we are writing the playbook as we go along. So the way I look at what we do, it's in terms of prevention on the front end, and everything is evidence-based. So we have an internal research team, and we're also studying different pedagogies in terms of what messages work, because we want behavioral change to happen. We don't want to panic parents. We want to surface the risks, also share with them the benefits, but then give them very specific pragmatic solutions about how they can take control and mitigate those risks. Then we have the protection side of things, where we've got our investigative teams, and we take down serious and harmful content. So that we have a range of regulatory schemes. From our illegal content focuses mostly on child sexual abuse material. And we had a 95% increase in child sexual abuse material and reports, about 21,000 that came in over 2020. We also have powers in the wake of Christchurch around abhorrent violent material. We have a youth-based cyberbullying scheme. We had a 30% increase in youth-based cyberbullying over the COVID period. Wow. And then we've got an image-based abuse scheme now. It's still sometimes referred to as revenge porn. We don't call it revenge porn. Revenge for what? We think it leads to victim-blaming behavior. But that went nuts. We had a 600% increase over the Easter long weekend alone, because there was a sextortion scam, or 4 variants of a sextortion scam running the gamut. But we had about 142% increase in reports overall. And that makes sense, because people were locked down and away from their loved ones. They were turning to digital intimacy tools and sexting. They were also subscribing to sites like OnlyFans, and then coming to us when that subscription-based content had been shared more broadly across the internet. So there were a range of factors there.
Well, there's a few things there, but one is the numbers and the growth. So how you are managing that as an office. You mentioned you're sort of leading out the front and writing your own playbook, which can sometimes be a bit sort of challenging, I suppose, is probably the key word. And then it sounds like you're moving definitely more into, say, that enforcement, and you must be working closely with, say, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, ASD potentially even, but definitely AFP and police agencies and, say, the Interpols and the like. Is that where you find, or part of your office is moving into the enforcement? It's a very specialised area once you have that knowledge of how all this is working?
Yeah, no, that's definitely happening. We've got some new legislation on the horizon, which will give us additional powers. I'll talk about our proactive change work in the context of safety by design and emerging threats, because I think changing the threat surface for the future is a really important thing. If you think about prevention, we don't want it happening in the first place. Protection is taking down the seriously harmful content after the damage has been done, but then also focusing on how we shape the future in positive ways is really, really important. We are definitely developing our enforcement investigative grunt and using a lot of these insights to share intelligence with law enforcement agencies. We've got MOUs with all the state and territory state law enforcement agencies, and we've just re-signed an updated MOU with the AFP recently. So yeah, that's working really, really well. And yeah, there is a lot of intersection between privacy, scams, safety, and security. I think of them as four legs of the stool, rather. Very distinct but complementary disciplines. And so figuring out how we can all leverage each other's respective core competencies and move forward together, I think is really, really key. I mean, we're very small. We're considered a micro agency compared to the enormous Home Affairs portfolio. But I do think we're punching above our weight. We're doing a lot more work engaging internationally with other countries that want to build similar online safety regulators. So as I mentioned, Fiji, Ireland is next. We're talking to Canada, to the US, and to the UK, who have an online harms bill out. And I think, for us to really make progress, we are going to have to perform some pincher moves and be working, across jurisdictions together. And we want to make sure that other regulators are learning from what's worked for us. They're all going to be slightly different, but we don't want a regulatory splinter net either. We want to be moving on a similar trajectory. So then again, the industry isn't playing us off each other, which we have seen in the past.
There's no doubt there's a lot there from what you're doing on the public messaging that the cybersecurity sector, because in fact, I was going to reach out. I think it was episode 28. We had you on our podcast show, 2017 that was. So it's great to have you back after so long. But we were talking about that. You mentioned privacy, safety, and then security. There's a lot there that the cybersecurity industry needs to take on from that messaging. And obviously, you will have cybersecurity messages in there. I'm conscious of the time. We've just got a couple of minutes, and the new legislation I've got up in front of me in terms of protecting Australians against harmful online abuse. The submissions closed, I think, on Friday last week. Any insights into how many submissions came in and how much interest there is in this?
I mean, I think there is a lot of interest in this. I don't think there have been some concerns raised and some objections, which our department and our minister will be taking on board. But the most significant, I think, elements of the legislation, it does sort of enshrine and it strengthens a lot of our current regulatory schemes. But it will expand the players that we can take it to. So when this legislation was developed in 2015, the focus was social media. We've obviously seen a range of online harms playing out on gaming platforms, on dating apps. And even as we've been issuing notices and notifications, hosting arrangements are really important. So the app stores, for instance, play a really important role in ensuring that they are hosting apps that aren't rogue apps, that aren't violating privacy, safety, and security. And then there'll be some new powers that will be very targeted and very high threshold around adult cyber abuse. But one of the most significant, I guess, systemic change pieces will be this whole new scheme around the basic online safety expectations and being able to issue transparency reports to a range of companies to understand how they're dealing with really vexing problems, whether it's anonymity online, whether it's recidivism, or the constant return of bad actors to platforms to continue harassing or assaulting people online, understanding what policies are in the first place and if they're being fairly and consistently enforced. And this very much plays into safety by design, which is really gathering steam internationally. It just makes sense. It makes more business sense for companies to be building safety, assessing risk, building in protections at the front end rather than waiting till things go wrong. A tech wreck moment isn't inevitable. And I'm really interested to see what Alex and Michelle do in the startup sector. And one of the things that we released earlier this month was a new set of investor resources. Often tech investors are the adults in the room. The founders aren't thinking about how their technology might be misused. And we thought this is a great way for them to assess their own risk in investing in a responsible technology. And so we've developed a checklist for all these companies to be thinking about what are the primary safety concerns they need to be considering, as well as some due diligence clauses in there. But we'll be developing and rolling out an assessment tool for companies, both startups and for large-scale companies in probably the April timeframe, which again we very extensively consulted on. It's like a safety impact assessment that will be spat out, but also surfaces good practice.
Beautiful. I think you couldn't choose a better segue to the next next session. But Julie, that does sound great. Are there resources available there now already? I take it's eSafety.gov.au.
You got it.
Great. Well, look, I think we're going to start. As I said, we're going to stop at 3:25 on the dot, and you've provided a perfect segue to our next session and next interview. What I will do, just as you go, I'm going to put the link into our 2017 interview, and at that time I still had teenage kids, but they're in their 20s now, so I'm done. Thank goodness for that. But there it is. There's a link there from our episode 28 and discussing cyberbullying and child exploitation. And unfortunately, it doesn't sound like things have gotten too much better. But look, you're doing very, very important work, Julie. And in terms of that spokesperson for eSafety, I don't think we could have anyone better, to be honest. So keep cracking on and doing the good work that you're doing. And for those who watch the ABC Q&A this Thursday night, I'll give you a plug.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Bye-bye.
Very much. Julie Inman Grant, eSafety Commissioner with the Australian Office of the eSafety Commissioner. I'll let you go. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.